You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. Let's turn to Front Page, where I sit down with another journalist to talk about the biggest news developing right now and how it affects the Pacific Northwest. Today's guest is KUOW's politics editor and frequent Soundside collaborator, Sound Politics editor as well, Kat Smith. Welcome.
Hi, Libby.
If you and I cannot be out at the Belgium-Senegal watch parties having a beer at this hour, which apparently a lot of people are doing, I am just so happy we can be together, at least commiserating.
Yeah. Are we going to watch it?
No,
Are we going to watch it on our phones?
We're going to do radio. That's what we're going to do.
You're going to do radio. I'm going to be watching it on my phone.
Okay, well, I better hurry up and get to Front Page. And this first story takes us to the King County Regional Homelessness Authority.
I want to make sure that every single dollar that we collect in taxes goes to its highest use, and we're funding all of the things that work.
That is King County Executive Gurmai Zahalai on Cascade PBS last month talking about KCRHA. The agency has been under the microscope lately. A really damning financial audit released in April indicated a serious mismanagement problem when it comes to funding, including a nearly $45 million negative cash balance at one point and $8 million that was unaccounted for, might have been late arriving receipts, things like that, but it was $8 million that they couldn't say where it was. Last week, the agency's own count showed homelessness in the county had increased by 9% over the last 2 years. And leaders in the city of Seattle and King County, Kat, have just been agonizing over this. They've been trying to decide what's next for KCRHA. Some have called to dissolve the agency. Well, Mayor Katie Wilson and County Executive Gurmai Zahalai today made an announcement that shed some light on their thinking. Mm-hmm. It sounds like they are going to majorly shrink KCRHA's responsibilities, the money that's going to them, and just overall their role in homelessness response in our region. What stands out to you about what the mayor and the executive announced today?
Okay, so we have a reporter down at City Hall right now reporting on this. Shout out Amy Radel. I just got off the phone with her. Man, this is bad for the KCRHA. So the city and county are basically going to take back control of their funds and contracts from the agency. And they give the lion's share of the funding to KCRHA. So they're going to claw back about $160 million. And I think that leaves like $65 million in federal funds for KCRHA to manage. It's the agency's name that's being used on those forms that they file with the government. So that's not going to change for now. But people are going to lose their jobs at this agency. If it's going to get dramatically slimmed down like this, there are about 100 jobs at the agency right now, and maybe 20 of them are going to get the axe, likely more in the future. The city and county might end up hiring some of those people if their specialties are in doing some of the things that they're going to claw back from the agency. Bottom line, a majority of the funding is getting yanked, not yet a majority of the jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it ultimately comes down to, I think, that it's too difficult to remove KCRHA from the flow of that federal money coming in to the region. I mean, it kind of just has to become a pass-through organization for those grants coming through. David Croman and Stephanie Stokes at the Seattle Times also reporting on this. They're saying that the KCRHA will keep control of databases that track people who receive services, the biennial count for people that stay in shelters or outside that we just talked about, as well as the functions required to receive federal funding. So that's, a relatively limited scope. Now the city and county are saying we are going to be going it alone, separately with our response, of course, coordinated between the two of them. But that was kind of the whole thing that the KCRHA was created to solve in the first place was the separation between the city and county and trying to avoid
better
streamline
and
yes,
the whole thing.
exactly.
So Katie Wilson and Gurmai Zahalai have previously told us that they don't want to end the KCRHA completely, right? They when that financial audit happened and there was a big brouhaha over should we end it, should we not? Wilson and Zahalai say no, let's keep it going. It'd be too chaotic to pull out of it. Other politicians want to end the KCRHA. Members of the Seattle City Council and the County Council have said that publicly, but Wilson and Zahalai have not said that publicly. Mm-hmm. But what they're doing with this new clawback, they're gutting the KCRHA even if they're not fully killing it.
Yeah. I just want to highlight that this is all happening at the same time that Housing and Urban Development, the agency, the federal agency funding, is a big question mark. There are tens of millions of dollars that could be at stake as HUD is shifting its strategy away from the housing first model for homelessness response, which, focuses on getting people stabilized in housing before they're required to do things like mental health treatment and substance abuse treatment. HUD really wants now, under the Trump administration, to focus on these time-limited emergency shelter, transitional shelter models that then are trying to get people back up on their feet faster to supposedly get jobs and be self-sufficient. So that could, again, like 90% of the homelessness funding that the federal government sends out across the country goes to housing first models. That includes most here in Seattle and King County. It could jeopardize, again, tens of millions of dollars. And there's a huge question mark about what the future is there as that's being fought out in court.
Yeah, I know. I really don't understand what this is. It kind of seems like this news is breaking right now. So I'm stumbling over my words, but it really seems like the city and county are hanging KCRHA out to dry. I mean, they're really going to be under a federal microscope now, and the only money that they're managing is federal money.
Yeah. I want to highlight the fact that in Los Angeles County, which was the basis for some of how KCRHA was first conceived back in 2019 when that agency was created, they have a joint agency themselves. I used to report on this because I worked in Southern California. It's called LAHSA, the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. And that agency, just in the past few months, has had its federal grants completely yanked because of allegations of fraud in the agency. LAHSA, LA County is just so much bigger than it's bigger than most states in terms of population. So this is a massive agency. It's been around since the 90s. But with the federal funding cut off, the county there has also pulled its funds. The city is still funding it. They are in like a complete chaos environment there because, again, the federal government has come in and said the changes you're making, county and city, are not sufficient. And we've decided that you don't get this federal money anymore. So let me tell you what, it's Seattle leaders and King County leaders are definitely watching what's happening in Los Angeles and very concerned.
So maybe they're trying to get ahead of that?
Yes, trying to show that they are doing what they can to clean house, because that could be catastrophic for the region.
Right.
That is our story number one for Front Page. We're going to keep watching again. Amy Radel is going to be filing on this, Kat?
Yep, shortly.
Amy Radel, shout out the KUOW newsroom. Moving on to story number two, which has to do with Supreme Court rulings that affect Washington state. And we're going to hear from two people on very different sides of the same issue here. So take a listen.
It's such an issue because it's taking away this student athlete's choice to choose which safe spaces they're in. You're going into locker rooms, or for my situation, my living space, and being told these are all women, thinking I'm comfortable doing whatever I need to be doing, changing and getting dressed where I want to. And then I found out the whole time that I've been sharing hotel rooms, locker rooms, my living space with a man.
And, I think what was so heartbreaking is that we have just seen these attacks against trans kids over and over again because it is their way to distract from the real issues that people are facing.
Those two voices you just heard, Representative Pramila Jayapal from Washington, and before that, San Jose State volleyball player Brooke Slusser on Fox News. Kat, June is Supreme Court ruling season, and we got a stack of really big ones this week.
A hefty stack.
The court upheld birthright citizenship for babies born in the U.S. to undocumented parents. It also handed greater power to President Trump to fire the heads of independent government agencies, except the Federal Reserve. But I want to zero in on some of these rulings that have particular resonance here in Washington state. And one of them is the decision by the court to uphold state bans on transgender athletes that were trying to participate in girls' sports, basically saying states can ban trans girls from participating in girls' sports. That stemmed from two cases, one in West Virginia, one in Idaho, where trans girls had sued to be able to play in K through 12 and college sports. What did you take away from that ruling, Kat, and how it impacts our state?
Okay, so so immediately it doesn't immediately impact our state, but it does kind of set the stage for something that's going to happen in a few months. So those two states that you mentioned, West Virginia and Idaho, with those trans athlete bans, those laws can stay on the books. And the majority of justices said that those laws don't violate the Constitution and they don't violate Title IX, which is a federal law prohibiting sex-based discrimination. Now, 25 other states also have similar bans on the books that prevent trans athletes from participating in girls' sports. So the ruling is good news for those states, but for states like Washington, we do not have a trans athlete ban. Nothing is going to change here because of this ruling. Our state offers protections for trans kids who want to play on teams that align with their gender identity. It's been that way for 20 years, and it'll stay that way. But the ruling creates pressure. It throws fuel on a culture war fire that's already burning hotter and hotter, and it's burning so hot that it's actually going to touch every voter in the state this fall. So the question of trans athletes will be on the ballot in Washington this November in the form of an initiative, basically a question for voters. It's going to ask you if you think trans girls should be allowed to play on girls' sports teams. And the people
K through 12 sports teams.
Yeah, and people who back that initiative, they're not just conservatives, they're also moderate Democrats who support this issue. Nationally, there's majority support for banning trans girls from girls' sports, but Washington is a lot more liberal than states that already have those bans on the books. So if the ban were to pass in the fall, Washington would kind of be an outlier in the group of states that have already, like half of states that have already decided to create a ban around this issue.
Those are mostly red states, basically.
Mostly, yeah. Virginia's in the list too, but it's mostly red states.
Yeah. So basically, we're watching to see what happens with this ballot measure that voters are going to be deciding on, and then if voters do decide to pass that measure, this Supreme Court ruling would simply uphold the state's right to potentially ban trans girls from sports. Okay, so that's one announcement from the court that has resonance here. There's another ruling. Actually, it's not a ruling. It's an announcement that the Supreme Court is going to take up a case that is very interesting. It also involves trans kids here in Washington state. That is a law that's aimed at protecting kids, including transgender youth, that's been on the books. The justices of the Supreme Court agreed to hear a challenge to our state's law, which says emergency shelters can notify the state instead of parents when runaway kids seek gender-affirming care. The justices will also look at a related state law allowing kids as young as 13 to receive outpatient treatment without a parent's consent. I just want to read here from the Washington State Standard. Jerry Kornfield, I believe, reported on this. Washington law requires parents to be notified within 72 hours of their child's arrival at an emergency shelter unless there are compelling reasons not to do that notification. So if there are signs of abuse or neglect, things like that, the staff can instead notify the Department of Children, Youth, and Families with the state, which would take the lead to reaching out to parents. So this court fight that the Supreme Court is going to hear, it stems from a state law which expanded the list of compelling reasons that a young person feels they could be subject to abuse or neglect. And that includes covering when they are pursuing gender-affirming care or reproductive health services. So like if a kid is getting an abortion, that kind of thing. Now, Stephen Miller's group, America First Legal, has sued over this, basically saying this violates the rights of parents. The Supreme Court says, yes, we'll accept the case beginning this fall. What do you make of that, Kat?
Conservatives and moderate Democrats in this state have been frustrated for years with this sort of collection of laws and policies that we have here that are aimed at protecting kids who come from anti-LGBTQ households. But parents like the group of parents that are suing Washington State that are now going to have their case heard by the Supreme Court, they say the state is basically usurping their right to raise their kids the way they want to raise their kids. So they think the state is taking way too heavy of a hand in this matter. And I think since the court's term is now over, we're probably not going to hear much about this for the next 6 months or so. But there is a parallel fight that, again, we're going to see on our ballots this fall that is actually kind of related to this. And that's the Parents' Bill of Rights law. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because it's really confusing and it needs a little bit more explanation than I can give. But basically, conservatives introduced this parents' rights law shortly after that emergency shelter law that we've been talking about passed in 2023. That's at the center of this Supreme Court case. So the Parents' Bill of Rights has more to do with schools and parents getting information from the schools. But it's all part of this related anxiety about, the state wanting to protect LGBTQ youth and conservative and moderate parents feeling that's overreach.
Yeah, like the state's getting between them and their kids.
Yeah, so we'll see that on the ballot this fall, too.
Yeah. So obviously a really huge battles, several of them coming up on the horizon here in Washington state that also have to do with the Supreme Court. Really quickly, it's kind of interesting that the Supreme Court did decide to take up that challenge to the Washington state law. Prior courts had said that the parents challenging it, the Stephen Miller group that represented parents, didn't have standing because those parents didn't actually have kids who had run away. They had people who said that their kids had exhibited some signs of gender dysphoria and that they were worried that if they eventually ran away, that they could then access care and that things would happen that were not told to the parents. But prior courts had said this is such a series of potentialities, like they're so hypothetical that you don't have standing for this. This actually came up with a number of the abortion rights challenge cases in the past too, the issue of standing. But the Supreme Court says they have standing and they're going to hear it. Finally, this one has gone a little bit more under the radar, Kat, because I think this ruling is super wonky. But it's you and me. We are the wonkettes of KUOW. So let's get into it. This is the Supreme Court decision that held that limits on coordinated campaign spending between candidates and political parties are a violation of the First Amendment. So now political parties can spend unlimited amounts of money in coordination with political candidates.
More money in politics. Great.
Oh, man. So this was a successful challenge by the National Republican Senatorial Committee. It is expected to benefit Republicans because the GOP has a huge party fundraising advantage going into the midterms.
They have an order of magnitude more cash on hand than the Democrats do.
So what do you think how is this going to affect campaigns? How is this going to affect what voters see?
Well, I've seen a lot of doom and gloom about this. A lot of people, especially on the left, think, big money in politics is bad. And Democrats obviously think this is a bad ruling because it's not good for them. They have a bunch of debt and way less cash on hand than the Republicans do. But before I lean too much into the doomerism, I am actually curious to see how the DNC plays this, because there is this inter-party fight that's exploding across the country. Lefty Democrats are getting this groundswell of support and they're challenging establishment incumbents. And I'm really curious to see how the DNC kind of wades into that fight with their pocketbook. And interestingly, unlike super PACs, which can also spend unlimitedly, super PACs can't coordinate with the candidates, but the parties...
For now, yeah, they still can't.
Right, for now. But the parties can. And so this is going to be really interesting. The parties are going to be able to coach and try to influence candidates, something that super PACs can't do.
Yeah.
So I actually am going to reserve judgment here and watch and see how this kind of plays out, because there could be some interesting knock-on effects that are just not apparent right now that may rear their head in time.
Almost surely will mean more TV ads because candidates get better deals on television time during campaign season. And if the parties can just funnel all that money through candidates, you're just going to see a lot more, even more ads.
Who doesn't love commercials when you're trying to watch something exciting?
Yeah, like the World Cup. Okay, final story here on Front Page.
Okay. What the cream cheese does is navigates very well into the sweetness of the onion, the mustard, and the jalapeno. Almost becomes a diplomat that brings everything together.
The cream cheese becomes a diplomat. Chef Jose Andreas, he is so great. The New York Times Wirecutter team, they voted a panel of experts. It was 3 people who ate 8 different cities' hot dog offerings: Detroit, Cincinnati, New York,
How
Chicago,
do you get that job?
West Virginia. I know. What are we even doing here? Kansas City, Arizona, and Seattle. And lo and behold, Kat, it was the Seattle dog that took the top spot.
That's a hot take, man. That's a polarizing dog.
I love a Seattle dog, but I
like
want to know, what do you think is canonical ingredients for a Seattle dog?
Oh, God, I've only lived here for 4 years. Cream cheese and those, grilled onions?
That's what I think. So when I looked at the ingredients of the Seattle dog that they ate on the New York Times...
He said jalapeno.
It was jalapenos, butterflied hot dog. Yeah, the butterflying, cutting it open so you get more surface area. That I agree with. Cream cheese and mustard. And the grilled
mustard.
Onions.
Forgot about the mustard.
The thing that I didn't find to be canonical was sriracha. They put sriracha on theirs, which I love as an option. But it's not the real traditional Seattle dog.
I actually don't think I've ever had
ingredients. I've never had sriracha
good.
On a Seattle dog.
It'd probably be good with the cream cheese.
I want to know where these New York Times people got sriracha as, again, that's the platonic ideal of a Seattle dog. I'm glad we won, but I just think that's an optional condiment for your Seattle dog. The key is the grilled onions, the cream cheese, and the dog, right? I mean, am I wrong?
I guess that's what I thought, but I don't know. Man, look, hot dog is like the Wild West. You can do anything to a hot dog and it's usually good. You ever had peanut butter jelly and bacon on a hot dog?
No, but I'm in.
It's so good, and it sounds like it'd be really bad and weird, and it works somehow. It shouldn't, but it does.
This is my opportunity to announce to the Soundside audience that I am pregnant. And so everything that you just said sounds amazing to me right now. And I could absolutely go for a PB&J and bacon hot dog.
This is how you're choosing to announce your pregnancy. I'm so glad I could help.
That's right. And you know what? It's time to end Front Page with that. Thank you so much, everybody. And Kat Smith, always a joy. I just love having you on Front Page.
Great. Have me back again soon. We'll talk about more snacks.
Let's go have a hot dog after this. Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime right here online at KUOW.org, or of course on your favorite podcast app.